RGB Sconce in Context, uncovering the historical references in Alan Phelan's sculpture. RGB Sconce Hold Your Nose is a temporary sculpture rich in aesthetic and historical meaning. The site-related nature of this sculpture is indicated through the artist's engagement in local history. Through a counterfactual methodology in his artistic practice, Alan Phelan often assigns a local history to his work.
So my interest in history, in art, is really not as a way of using history to illustrate ideas, but it's actually to counter particular narratives and aligning things that don't necessarily belong together to make a different point. So I decided to reference Dublin Castle in the proposal. So it kind of connects to that secular notion of the City Hall, that it represents as a site, part of what Ireland is in all the best possible ways, but also it's, you know, acknowledging that history is pretty messy, because what I use as a reference point aren't all these like wonderful positive events. It's a rather negative thing, specifically the Dublin Castle Scandal of the 1880s. And that was it's a really particularly interesting moment in Irish history and Irish queer history, because it has left a record of gay and queer life in Dublin in the late 19th century.
This story is labelled the Dublin Castle Scandal by the nationalist press and the United Ireland in particular, because they want this to be seen as a scandal that is encompassing the whole of the British administration in Ireland. One of the members of the Irish Parliamentary Party, Tim Healy, he's in Westminster, he decides to pursue the British administration not just on political grounds, but also he starts to target the personal morality of members of that administration. He alludes to rumours that James Ellis French, who is the County Inspector of the Royal Irish Constabulary in County Cork and the Director of Detectives, there are rumours that he has been having same-sex relations with other men. When this is published, French comes under pressure then to pursue a libel case. William O'Brien, who is the editor of the United Ireland newspaper and is also an MP, he decides to hire a private detective to investigate the stories about French. But what he uncovers is not just stories about French, but a whole underground gay world in Dublin, which involves all kinds of people, including very prominent figures like Gustavus Cornwall, who is the head of the General Post Office, the postal system in Ireland. And William O'Brien decides, instead of retreating from this story, he's going to double down, and he also publishes a story about Cornwall in the newspaper. In the meantime, French has a nervous breakdown. Cornwall takes over the libel trial, and it goes to court, goes to the four courts. And over the course of this trial, the stories not only about Cornwall and French come out, but about all these other men as well. And Cornwall loses the case. Not only Cornwall and French, but a number of other men are arrested, and they're placed here in Kilmainham jail to await their trial. And a number of the men are convicted. There's a really interesting cartoon at the time that the United Ireland publish, which shows O'Brien and Healy, and they have these bottles of disinfectant, and they're kind of washing down Dublin Castle.
The title of the work, RGB Sconce, Hold Your Nose, the Hold Your Nose part of it is a reference to this pamphlet of poetry that was published by the Irish Weekly News, and it was a nationalist newspaper that invited, apparently, readers to contribute poems about the scandal in Dublin Castle, which are actually called sanitary songs.
It's a collection of poems supposedly written by different people around Ireland, and each one is named after a flower, and they're deeply critical of the British administration in Ireland, and they're very satiric. And there's lots of reference to people like Cornwall and French and the main characters. It's all kind of embedded in these poems. Decent man, that's Dublin Castle, where they live beneath the rose. If you've got a grain of wisdom, when you pass it, hold your nose.
This is one of a series of videos exploring Alan Phelan's sculpture. To view the whole series, please visit sculpturedublin.ie.